I had gotten a call. A lot of the work that I've been doing, it's you do a good job on one movie, and then usually the director of the next movie, if your name comes up, checks with the previous movie to see if actually you did a good job and you were easy to get along with. So I got a call from Mike Nichols. I had just made a movie in Montana, where I have a buffalo ranch called Heartland. And award that I always wanted to get was the National Cowboy Hall of Fame Award in Oklahoma City. And I was there, and I was sitting at a table with the governor of Oklahoma, Governor Nye. So after I got the award and I got a call from Mike Nichols, I said, wow, well, Kerr McGee is in Oklahoma. I know the governor. I'm going to go see him. He'll be happy to see me. He was very gracious at the dinner table, and tell him I'm coming to make a movie on Karen Silkwood. So I did fly to Oklahoma, and at the governor's office, outside is the only place I ever knew it actually had a working oil pump right next to the building, and it was actually pumping oil. And I went inside, and there are three enormous portraits inside the rotunda. One is of Chief Sitting Bull. The third one I don't remember, but the second one was of Mr. McGee, of Kerr McGee. And so I went to see the governor, and I said, hey, Gov, how are you? And he said, oh, Mike, nice to see you. And I said, listen, I need some help. I want to have access to the Kerr McGee plant and introduction to the people at Kerr McGee, because I'm making a movie about Karen Silkwood. And he looked at me and he said, Mike, you know, I'd love to help you, but if you could make this movie somewhere else, I would love it. I hopped in my car and I went to Texas, and we made it in Dallas. We went to the Las Colinas, which was a facility that was just built by Trammell Crow, and we were the first movie to shoot at that stage. The interesting thing about Meryl is that during the course of the movie, since she had been exposed to plutonium, Mike wanted her to lose weight from the beginning of the movie, and we tried to shoot as much as we could in continuity. And Mike says, well, you know, Karen's going to have to lose weight, so we're going to shoot the beginning of the movie, and then we're going to go away and come back. Now, as a producer, that's the kiss of death. That's something you don't ever want to do, is break up the crew and the cast. You never get the crew back. It's hard to get the cast. They're on other movies. And so I got a hold of Meryl, and I said, well, Meryl, how long will it take for you to lose weight so that you look like you're thinner at the end of the movie? And she said, Mike, don't worry about it. I can do it over a weekend. And that was true. She did. Yeah, the part of that Cher played, we didn't, you know, based on a true story, and there's always the cutting edge of whether it's something that's in public domain or whether you need the rights of people. With Karen, it was so much news and stuff about it, we weren't worried about it. But the part that Cher played, her partner, we sort of fudged it a little. So we had to change the part a little bit so that we didn't infringe upon her privacy. That's always an issue in making movies. If you're making a movie about a real person, it's always smart to either base it on a book or something that you get the rights to. So when the lawyers come after you, you can say, well, we read it in this book and we got clearance from it. So it had, that movie, because of the subject matter, had to be made for a price. And Mike Nichols is a superstar. So sometimes the issue, to make it for a price, I had to make some suggestions to him. For example, the opening part of the movie, it was shot in Houston, and most of the movie was shot in Dallas, so we had to fly to Houston. So we all got on an airplane, and the crew and myself, we sat in the back of the airplane. And Mike Nichols, because he's a member of the Directors Guild, is entitled to first class, and it's an hour flight. So I went to Mike and I said, listen, We're in the back, you're in the front. It looks better in terms of camaraderie, but it's up to you. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And he got in the back of the plane. I respect him for that, you know. And the same thing is that he had a caterer, his own caterer, you know, and at dailies in those days, you know, we shot film, 35 millimeter film, and then we had his caterer at the dailies would have a spread on a table and tablecloths and cloth napkins and sushi and who knows what. And then he would give me the bill, and, you know, after about 2 days, we had not budgeted this kind of expense. So I showed the bill to Mike and asked him to sign it, and he looked at it, he signed it, and the next day the caterer was gone. So he was great with actors. People wanted to work with him, you know. He was open to ideas, but he knew what he wanted, and he knew how to get it. Good thing about Mike is that he knew when he had it. Some directors I've worked with don't know they have it, and they go on and go on. Mike figured it out pretty quickly. You know, he didn't find out what the movie was like by shooting 15 masters, what scene was like by shooting 15 masters. He'd shoot a master, 1 or 2 takes, and then go in and get the performance he wants and the coverage he wants, and then move on. He was a very good director. I think the movie he made before was Day of the Dolphin. I'm not sure. So I think he was eager to get back to his roots of making small good movies. And so I suspect that's one of the reasons that I'm on the movie, was because I have a reputation of bringing a movie in for what I say it's going to be made for, and for the amount of time it's going to be made for. And that's what he was looking for in this movie, I think, rather than just have someone who's going to sign the checks no matter what he had to say. I think he was looking for some respectful control. The movie did go over budget slightly. And, you know, being the first film at the facility, Las Colinas proved to be more expensive because it had never been tested. For example, the construction foreman came up to me and said, well, there's no wooden floor, it's a cement floor. How am I going to put the buildings up? And I said, well, you're going to have to put a floor down. So we had to put a floor down. Karen Silkwood, Meryl, when she gets contaminated, has to take a shower and they scrub her. But there was no water on the set, so we had to drill a hole into the stage and bring water in. Also, Dallas at that time wasn't a great production facility, so we had to bring in equipment, which they have now. I mean, if you went back to Dallas now, they have grip and electric and camera, and it's all there. But in those days, it wasn't. So, and then, you know, we had to find a place for them to live, which was outside of Dallas, and so there are issues with housing and per diem and bringing the crews there, but that's part of the business, you know.
Now this is dry processing, the heart of the production process. Come on in, trainees.
We were duplicating the facility at Los Alamos where Karen was working, and we built that facility, and Patricia von Brandenstein, a world-class Academy Award-winning production designer, went to Los Alamos, and we met with a retired person from the nuclear facility, and we were able to get the idea and the plans for what the boxes looked like and how they worked, how they were making the pellets. And one day, the nuclear physicist came from Los Alamos and came to visit the set, and he said, "How did you get the pellet machine? There are only 3 in the world that make these pellets." And Patricia said, "We built it." it was made out of plywood, but it produced pellets, and it was real. You know, there was Kurt Russell in it, and I was a motorcycle rider at the time, and you know, you never like to have the actors on your motorcycle, but of course he would hop on my motorcycle and take off, and you would just hope that nothing would happen to him. And you know, Meryl is a great artist and a great actress. The funny thing about it was that when Meryl and Cher's camper were parked next to each other, there were autograph seekers all around Cher's camper. And so when I would call Meryl to the set, no one knew who she was, and she had to like say, "Excuse me," to get to the set through all of Cher's admirers, which was fun. The beauty of being a producer and an assistant director is you have yes and no in one hand. You created the problem of the money, but you can solve the problem on the set, and so you really knew, and you're also next to the director. So you want to encourage his vision, but also he knows that you have the money strings, you know. I would always sign the check, and on occasion I would, you know, the camera has a viewfinder, and the viewfinder goes to the video monitor, and the director sometimes is behind the camera watching the actors, and sometimes they're on the video monitor, and sometimes if we were running a little rich, I would put a $20 bill in front of the camera, and it, of course, would go to the monitor, and you know, the director would see it, and I didn't have to say anything. He knew exactly what I was saying. It saved me a lot of words, and usually it was effective, you know. The script was written by Nora Ephron and Alice Arlen. Both of them made a good script. Mike liked the idea that they were around for part of it. Alice was around more than Nora, and he would rely on them. You know, Mike came from the theater. In my opinion, theater is a writer's medium, and film is more of a director's medium. So coming from theater, he respected the writing. So having them around was helpful. It was helpful for the actors, too. For a producer, it's a mixed bag, because sometimes it slows you down a little bit, sometimes it's helpful. It all depends who it is, you know. Also, you know, the writer's not the director. So when you're making a movie, it's more visual, or equally visual as well as written material. So the director's going to put another impact on it, you know. So also the movie was shot by Mirek Andracek, who was Milos Forman's director of photography.
'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear.
At the end of the movie, Karen is driving a car, and we decided to do that on the stage. And Amazing Grace is the song behind it. And then, because of legal reasons, there was always a question. It was done for ABC films at the time. There was always a question about how she died. And so that always became a discussion, and there was a compromise about the circumstances involving her death. I like stories based on real life stories, you know. I find that's a good source of material. You know, I wish that young people today were less on the internet and more out in the world reading and looking around them to find the stories. I think they become a little bit insulated in their own world rather than finding a story that not only their grandmother will like because she has to, but that it's an uplifting, or it's about something that make life better. I think Silkwood is a movie. If it wasn't for Mike Nichols, wouldn't have been made. You know, he brought to it, and Merrill brought to it. You know, movies are about what they're about and who's in it. You know, studios are very concerned about marketing, rightfully so. So the fact that Merrill and Kurt and Cher were in it, and Mike Nichols was directing it, helped getting it made. If I said I was going to direct it, we'd still be looking for money.